An underwater drone entered the Great Blue Hole. What it captured shocked the entire world. Off the coast of Belize lies a massive underwater sinkhole known as the Great Blue Hole, plunging 125 meters deep into the Earth's crust. For decades, divers and explorers have ventured into its surface waters, but only a few dared to descend further and uncover the secrets hidden in its dark depths. However, in the winter of 2018, a team from Aquatica Submarines began their mission to explore the bottom of the Great Blue Hole, and their terrifying discoveries shook the world. The mission of the Aquatica Submarines team at the Great Blue Hole in Belize was to create a 3D map of the sinkhole's interior. But during this process, beyond encountering familiar sights, they also came across phenomena that were completely new and unknown. At the start of their journey, the team spotted familiar creatures such as reef sharks, turtles, and massive coral formations. But as they descended to a depth of 90 meters, life began to disappear. The reason was a toxic layer of hydrogen sulfide stretching across the sinkhole like a floating blanket. Beneath this layer, there was no oxygen, no life, only the remains of conchs, shells, and hermit crabs that had fallen into the hole and suffocated. Pushing past this graveyard of shells and reaching the bottom at around 120 meters deep, the team stumbled upon something completely unexpected: stalactites. This discovery provided scientists with crucial clues about the sinkhole's ancient past. Stalactites can only form when water drips inside a dry cave. This suggests that the Great Blue Hole was once a massive dry cavern. During that time, Earth was likely teeming with countless forms of life living within. Scientists believe the cave was formed during the last ice age, which ended roughly 14,000 years ago. When the ice age came to a close, sea levels began to rise and flooded and eventually collapsed the cave, leaving behind the Great Blue Hole as we see it today. Researchers also suggest that other marine sinkholes, such as the one in the South China Sea and Dean's Blue Hole in the Bahamas, may have formed in a similar way. As the scientists continued their descent, they discovered another clue about the past. It was a thin layer of sediment accumulated on top of the conch shell graveyard. This layer served as a precise record of all the major storms, storm cycles, and ice age periods that had occurred throughout history. In addition, it was noted that during the collapse of the Mayan civilization, severe droughts had taken place following major storm cycles. As the team pressed deeper into their exploration of the hole, they found a 2-liter Coca-Cola bottle and a lost GoPro, which still contained a few vacation photos. But their discoveries did not end there. They also came across the remains of 2 of the 3 people believed to have gone missing in the Blue Hole, finally uncovering their last resting place.
With great reverence, they informed the Belizean government of the location of these findings. They also remarked that the place was dark and eerily quiet. Scientists predict that the sinkhole will not remain open to exploration forever, as cascading sands continue to pour in day by day, slowly filling the hole like an underwater hourglass. For that reason, while it still exists, humanity has the opportunity to admire its beauty and study its mysteries. But did you know there are some astonishing facts about the Great Blue Hole in Belize? Let's dive deeper into those details. Terrifying facts about the Great Blue Hole in Belize. Originally, the Great Blue Hole was a small local secret known only to the people of Belize. But it became world famous in 1971 when the legendary marine biologist and underwater explorer Jacques Cousteau visited the site aboard his ship Calypso. Together with his crew, he dove into its depths and confirmed that it had formed thousands of years ago when rising sea levels flooded a network of ancient caves. Cousteau declared the Great Blue Hole in Belize to be one of the top 10 diving sites on the planet. The sinkhole is located about 100 kilometers off the coast of Belize. Surrounding the Great Blue Hole is the Lighthouse Reef Atoll. Divers often begin their journey in the shallow lagoon waters of the reef before venturing into the flooded cave, which contains stalactites and stalagmites stretching up to 12 meters long. The coral reef encircling the Great Blue Hole forms a natural ring, a lighter-colored shallow belt of water surrounding the deep sapphire blue waters of the submerged cavern. Thousands of years ago, when the cave system was flooded, the Great Blue Hole was formed with a vertical entrance more than 300 meters wide and plunging over 125 meters deep below today's sea level. As divers descend into the Great Blue Hole, the space grows darker and clearer, revealing a vast network of submerged caves, home to many marine creatures, including the rare hammerhead shark. Because of the depth and difficulty of the dive, only experienced divers are allowed to explore these underwater structures, making the Great Blue Hole one of the most unique diving destinations in the world. The Great Blue Hole lies along the Belize Barrier Reef, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and part of the second-largest reef system in the world. Nearly perfectly circular in shape, with its dark blue waters framed by Lighthouse Reef and the Belize Barrier Reef, it is a breathtaking sight. The sinkhole was formed at the end of the last ice age, when rising sea levels flooded massive cave systems. Geologists have determined that these caves were formed around 153,000 years ago and became fully submerged about 15,000 years ago. Today, the Great Blue Hole is home to various species of sharks, including bull sharks, Caribbean reef sharks, and the rare hammerhead shark. In 2012, the Discovery Channel ranked the Great Blue Hole as #1 on the list of the 10 most amazing places on Earth. It can even be seen from above, easily recognizable thanks to its perfectly round shape, sitting amidst the Belize Barrier Reef.
The name Blue Hole was coined by British diver Ned Middleton in his book 10 Years Underwater, published in 1988. Due to the complexity of diving here, only experienced divers with at least 24 completed dives are permitted to explore the Blue Hole. Among the blue holes around the world, the one in the Red Sea on Egypt's Sinai Peninsula is considered the most dangerous. Several horrifying incidents have occurred there. Tariq Omar, a technical diver and professional instructor, became known as the collector of bones, or the keeper of the graveyard. The graveyard he oversaw was none other than the Blue Hole on the Sinai Peninsula. The Blue Hole is one of the most famous dive sites on Earth, attracting both novice and professional divers. However, it is also regarded as the most dangerous dive site in the world. Over the years, reports suggest that at least 130 people have lost their lives there, but the actual number is believed to be higher. Some estimates put the death toll at over 200, though no official records exist, leaving the true number uncertain. Since the late 1990s, Tariq has participated in nearly all, if not every body recovery operation carried out there. After 2 decades of recovering bodies, he eventually forgot most of the victims, remembering only the names of the first 2 he had ever retrieved, Martin Gara and Connor O'Riordan. In 1997, Martin traveled from Ireland to Egypt to work for a year as a diving instructor, taking advantage of the spectacular dive sites the region had to offer. Later that year, his friend Connor joined him, so the two could spend the remainder of the year together.
Connor was close to completing his final stage of training to become a certified diving instructor. Both were highly experienced, and everyone who knew them described them as careful and meticulous divers. Moreover, their passion for diving was so strong that this trip was more than just a leisure dive. It was a trial run for their future plans back in Ireland. They intended to survey the area before launching a travel company specializing in organizing overseas diving tours. In November of that year, about a month before they were scheduled to return home, they visited the infamous Blue Hole for a dive. This trip was part of a larger diving expedition organized by PADI, Professional Association of Diving Instructors, with several other experienced divers also participating. During the dive, Martin and Connor became separated from the group. Somehow, while on their own, they descended too deep for the gas mixture they were using. This caused them to gradually lose consciousness. Their regulators slipped from their mouths, and they sank to a depth of 65 meters.
The other divers only realized something was wrong once they surfaced and noticed that Martin and Connor had not returned on schedule. They immediately went back down to search, but by the time they were found, it was already too late. Their story resembles that of many others in the Blue Hole. Other careful and experienced divers have descended into the hole but never resurfaced. Many questions remain about the factors that make the Blue Hole so dangerous. To properly answer this, we must first identify what a blue hole actually is. During past ice ages, sea levels were about 100 meters lower than they are today. At that time, large stretches of land were exposed, revealing caves and sinkholes at the surface. Over time, rain eroded these exposed caves, as often happens with limestone. Later, when sea levels rose, salt water flowed into the rock, intensifying the erosion. Many of these surface caves eventually collapsed into massive circular sinkholes. Today, they can be seen underwater, but in reality, they are vertical cave systems. The frightening yet fascinating aspect of them is that the outer rim is composed of more solid rock, while the inner parts collapse more easily, allowing the hole to sink far deeper than the surrounding seafloor. The Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize is a prime example. The rim of the hole is only about 10 meters deep, but beyond that rim, it plunges vertically to 124 meters in a single drop. This sharp depth difference creates the strange color contrast visible from the surface. Around the rim, the shallow tropical water is a light blue, but in the center, it becomes a dark, deep blue, resembling the open ocean. Another consequence of this depth difference is that water circulation inside the hole is often very poor, especially at greater depths. In fact, many blue hole bottoms are completely anoxic. Aside from being deep and dark, these holes can be totally devoid of life, creating an eerie, barren world compared to the surrounding waters. Yet blue holes are found all over the globe and provide unique diving conditions. They often lack currents because they are isolated from the open sea. This is one factor divers don't have to worry about. Moreover, some blue holes are very close to shore. Sometimes just a short walk from the beach can take you into water that drops hundreds of meters. This makes them more accessible and convenient than many other diving sites. That's why they're popular for both scuba diving and free diving. But what makes this blue hole so dangerous? Even with all this information, we still don't have a clear answer as to why these dive sites are deadly, or specifically why the blue hole near Dahab is considered so hazardous. Unfortunately, there is no definitive answer.
It isn't even clear whether this site is more dangerous than others, because no official records exist of the number of dives or the number of fatalities. It's impossible to compare death rates against average diving risks. It may be that this site is indeed more dangerous, resulting in a higher fatality rate, or perhaps the total number of deaths is simply higher because so many dives take place here. Whatever the case, What is surprising is that this reputation has not diminished its allure. Part of the attraction lies in its deadly reputation, beautiful but lethal. On shore, a memorial honors the divers who lost their lives here. Almost hauntingly, future divers often visit these plaques before entering the water, hoping they won't be the next one is recovered, like Martin and Connor. In reality, the bodies that have been recovered represent only a fraction of those who never returned to the surface. Because of the hole's size and depth, sometimes remains aren't discovered until much later. By then, recovery is not encouraged due to decomposition. Even more chilling is that divers often record their descents into the blue hole. Reviewing the footage afterward, they sometimes notice equipment belonging to missing divers lying in the sand or resting on rocks at the bottom. One possible explanation for the Dahab Blue Hole's danger is its unique shape. From the surface, the hole's walls taper inward like a funnel as you descend. At a depth of 52 meters, there is a large archway on the far side of the hole. This archway opens into a 26-meter-long tunnel that slopes downward before piercing through the wall of the hole and opening into the open sea. Beyond that, there are steep drop-offs that plunge from 120 meters at the tunnel exit down to 800 meters. Although there are a few intermediate ledges, ultimately this leads into the abyss of the ocean floor. Only technical diving is possible beyond these depths, as normal air becomes toxic. This is very likely what makes the site so deadly. Because of the steep vertical drop so close to the surface, it is very easy for divers using normal air to descend too quickly without realizing how deep they've gone. By the time they understand what's happening, nitrogen narcosis becomes too severe, causing unconsciousness. Of course, not only divers using regular air have died here. For example, in 2011, a man named Egot planned a technical dive to 150 meters, around 50 meters above the actual depth of the site. Egot was an extremely experienced diver, and on that day, when he entered the blue hole, he had completed exactly 400 dives. He began his descent through the archway at 50 meters. At 90 meters, he encountered another diver who later recalled that Egot appeared to be trembling, though he signaled that he was fine. Egot then continued down to 120 meters, then 150 meters, the deepest he had ever gone. After touching a rock ledge at 150 meters, he began his ascent, but that's when things went wrong. At 130 meters, he started breathing rapidly, which quickly turned into full panic. In a split second, he bolted straight to the surface without making any decompression stops.
At the depth he had reached, failing to stop for decompression was extremely terrifying. All the gases dissolved in his blood under the pressure at depth were now expanding rapidly as he ascended. By the time he reached the surface, these gases caused unbearable pain and blocked blood vessels throughout his body. As his head broke the surface, Egot screamed in agony, and only a few minutes later, he was dead. Egot was one of those whom Tyrant did not need to recover. Although diving in this area is quite strictly regulated, money can still play an important role, and perhaps that is another reason why this hole is so dangerous. Most dive shops here are licensed, but there are still some that operate without permits. Furthermore, intense competition has driven down the price for each dive. For this reason, some guides and instructors are willing to overlook certain rules and regulations to earn a bit more money. This can create substandard conditions for inexperienced divers. Therefore, at the very least, those who pay for such services should go with trained and experienced professionals. The most famous incident at the Blue Hole occurred in April 2000, when a man named Yuri Lipsky came to Dahab with the intention of enjoying all the dive sites in the area. Bringing all his diving equipment, Yuri, himself a diving instructor, arrived in Dahab after visiting a friend in the nearby city of Tel Aviv.
Like many divers, Yuri's dream for years had been to dive into the blue hole. Notably, Yuri's father had a premonition and asked him to promise not to do anything reckless or dangerous. Despite this warning from his father, Yuri still tried to find someone to accompany him or to guide him. Just a few hours after arriving in town, Yuri walked along the streets past various dive shops looking for someone to go with or to guide him. Observers noticed Yuri pacing back and forth, asking about different services. Eventually, he found a local man who agreed to go with him. Soon after, the two headed to the diving site and entered the water. Throughout his dive, Yuri recorded video footage. The video begins with Yuri visible near the water's surface. Around him are other divers, coral reefs, and fish. The water is bright, blue, and crystal clear. He looks down at the camera briefly to make some adjustments and appears to attach some kind of cover to the lens. Perhaps he sensed that the equipment would be subjected to heavy pressure and needed extra protection. After making some final adjustments, once he seemed satisfied, he turned his attention to two other divers ahead of him. These two divers released long trails of bubbles rising from their regulators. They gently kicked their fins to maintain position, hovering together as if they were conversing.
Yuri approached them so closely that it seemed he nearly collided with them. Then he passed by, looking off into the distance, and all he could see was the black void of water with nothing visible below. From somewhere deeper, more bubbles were rising, showing that other divers were farther down, beyond sight. Yuri began moving in the direction of those bubbles. Eventually, he stopped, adjusted his camera, and started descending. He refocused and directed his gaze toward another diver below. It might have been the local man he had brought along. Then he looked up toward the surface, seeing the sunlight filtering down. His gaze returned downward, where it appeared to be the bottom. In reality, it was just the inner wall of the hole, and Yuri was swimming along its rim. The water there was much darker than near the surface above. What must be noted is that Yuri was only using regular air. As he descended, he became increasingly affected by nitrogen narcosis. Moreover, his buoyancy control device became less effective as pressure increased. The water had grown unbelievably dark. At that point, he glanced at his dive computer to check his depth. It read 81 meters. Regular air is not recommended below 40 meters, yet he had already descended to double that depth. He tried inflating his buoyancy control device, but he was too deep and his equipment was too heavy. He struggled for a few more moments, perhaps desperately trying to swim upward, but it was already too late. While Yuri was still attempting to manage the terrifying situation he found himself in, the camera stopped recording. When Yuri did not resurface after about 40 minutes, everyone knew what had happened. His parents were contacted shortly after, and his father arrived in Dahab the following day. After pleading with locals to retrieve Yuri's body from the depths, finally, Jared volunteered to carry out the recovery mission. This was the deepest recovery attempt ever undertaken at the time. Yuri was eventually found lying face down with excessive weight pressing on him at a final depth of 91 meters. Furthermore, Jared discovered that in his attempt to ascend, Yuri had overinflated his buoyancy control device to the point that it had burst. His body was brought up and all of his personal belongings were returned to his parents, including the camera. At the time, the guy did not know it was still functioning. The camera was only rated to work properly at a depth of 75 meters. Therefore, he assumed it had been destroyed and had not recorded anything. But unfortunately, the camera had captured everything,
and the footage was shown to Yuri's parents. The guide later admitted that had he known the camera was still working, he would have destroyed it himself.
In fact, the final 5 seconds of the recording were captured unintentionally the following day when they tried to test if the camera still worked. This tragic video is now used as a warning to new divers about the dangers of deep diving and has become the most infamous incident ever to occur at the Blue Hole in Dahab. What is striking about this footage is how quickly everything seemed to change, from clear and peaceful water to blackness and chaos. Within just moments, the water turned dark and strange. Before anyone could realize what was happening, it was already too late. Perhaps this is why the Blue Hole in Dahab has earned its reputation as one of the deadliest dive sites ever. Recently, a giant blue hole was discovered near Mexico. Thanks to this discovery, now considered the second deepest blue hole in the world, the mysterious realm of blue holes has become even more fascinating. Following tips from local fishermen, scientists from Colectivo de la Frontera explored a tropical estuary off the southeastern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico and found a blue hole. This hole measures nearly 45,000 square meters in area and plunges more than 274 meters deep. The world's deepest blue hole, the Dragon Hole in the South China Sea, is only slightly deeper at about 399 meters. Unsurprisingly, scientists named their discovery Tom Jaw Blue Hole, using a Maya phrase meaning deep water. Although this blue hole was discovered in 2021, researchers only recently published detailed findings in a study in the journal Frontiers in Marine Sciences. With the circular mouth near the surface, just 4.5 meters below sea level, and slopes of more than 80 degrees forming a massive cone-like structure, scientists noted that it is covered with biogenic particles, sediments, limestone, and gypsum deposits. Studying microbial diversity in these blue holes may provide a glimpse into the forms of life that thrive in such unique environments. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, explains that blue holes are underwater sinkholes formed from carbonate rock, such as limestone. They are considered ecological hotspots. NOAA also notes that the oceanography of these holes is unique. Human knowledge of blue holes is limited due to accessibility issues. Sometimes the entrances are too small, the depths too extreme, or oxygen levels too scarce, making exploration dangerous without specialized equipment. With mouths lying below sea level, limestone walls block tidal flows, creating a unique mix of water properties inside the hole. Research indicates that water properties vary dramatically with temperature and salinity gradients in the Tom Jaw Blue Hole. Hydrological records reveal a stratified water column with a thin oxygenated layer at the top, a hydrocarbon layer below it, and then a nearly anoxic layer beneath. These hydrocarbon-rich environments, full of hydrogen sulfide, do not destroy life entirely, but instead allow extremophiles to thrive in low oxygen conditions. This unique mixture of water chemistry and microbial life invites scientists to further explore the depths of blue holes to better understand their structure and the forms of life that may exist within.